Welcome, pregame.tv. Steve Fezzik here, flying solo. The boys are out around town scouting the props, hoping that they'll come out soon. But I'm sure we'll have Vegas runner Brady Cannon back next week. Today, we're going to talk about proposition betting in the Super Bowl basic strategy. This is an expertise of mine. There's certain areas that just lend themselves very well to a mathematical bent in terms of the pricing, and props certainly is one of them. And I'm going to recommend certain props you should be looking at and certain props you probably should stay away from as we go. But talk about the preliminaries as far as when the props are coming out in town. We do know the LVH Jay Cornegay will be up Thursday night, 7 p.m. here locally, and then everyone no doubt will get those big packets of sheets from the LVH and start start putting up their lines. Same thing for many of them. By the way, Jay's crew does a clever thing. They every year they have a typo in their package of sheets of at least one prop. One time they said, will a team punt, will they score before they punt? And they wrote on the sheet, will they score before they punt twice for their typo? Just to give the boys at the LVH something to bet against the copycats of the world that can't price their own props and don't recognize or realize when a horrific mistake is being made. So buyer beware if you're just picking up those sheets and you're not paying a lot of attention to the actual pricing. Johnny Avello over at the Win always puts up his own props, so they do a great job over there. I know he had a do or a die prop one year when the Colts were in the playoffs as to whether a die would score a touchdown and things like that. And, of course, MGM puts up their own props, as do several of the other places around town. Shop around, as always. In the prop betting, you want to look for the props you can bet yes or you can bet no. You can bet over. You can bet under. You want, in general, to avoid the needle in the haystack props. The who is going to score the first touchdown, who is going to go ahead, and exactly how many points are these teams going to score, and you got to get it right completely. Is Denver going to score exactly 31 points? All of those pretty much you wind up with the house having about a 40% hold on those props. Not impossible. You certainly can find value. There was a year that Caesar's Palace messed up, and they put down, when will the first touchdown be in a Seattle-Pittsburgh? And they said the first 2 minutes, 2 to 4 minutes, 4 to 6 minutes on up. And then they finally said any touchdown after 28 minutes, and they forgot that there's 60 minutes in a game, not 30 minutes. Long story short, Jerome Bettis got stuffed with 2:04 to go before the 2-minute warning of the first half, and that prop won, and it opened 100-1. So that's the only time in my life I remember cashing a 100-1 ticket. And so it's always worth reading all this, but in general, look to avoid the props that are the needle in the haystack, finding a winner. Look for the props that are the ones you can bet yes or no. And this is a very counterintuitive. In general, you want to look to bet on props where you want to lay extra vigorish. In general, if you see a prop and all you can tell me is that the no is minus 500 and the yes is plus 350, my first inclination is I like the no. Now, maybe the vig is too much with the bid ask in that situation and I won't bet it, but usually the public is going to overwhelm the sharp bettors, and they're going to come in and play the plus 300s, the plus 500s. They're going to try to bet a little to make a lot. The MGM got buried one year when the first score was a safety in a New England Giants Super Bowl, and the bettor got idiotic odds. He got like 40-1 on it. He should have gotten 400-1, but he was putting pictures of it out on the internet. Hey, I bet 2,000 to win 100,000 or whatever it was. And that's what they want, the hero bet. They want to make the bet and forecast the impossible and get paid just an absolute handsome amount. And so because of that, you're going to see pressure on all these no's. So if you like there not to be overtime, if you like there not to be a safety, been more safeties than we would like. No missed extra point, things like that. You have to lay the lumber on the big number to play no, but certainly that is the direction that you want to go. And even more so, things like if they'll put an alternative prop, like will there be a 50-yard field goal? They might make the no minus 200 if the longest field goal over under is 44.5, And that's one where there's a huge difference between kicking a 44-yarder and kicking a 54-yarder. I know Prater is great, but the weather won't be good, more than likely, and that's a big deal. Speaking of the weather, this is a new dynamic. We typically don't see this in the Super Bowl. Maybe it's going to rain at the Rose Bowl, but we don't see that we have to be checking the weather. Here we absolutely have to. If you're looking at kicker props, longest punt, longest field goal, number of field goals, just in general, how the players are going to do. There's certain players that obviously are going to do better in sloppy conditions. Peyton Manning is not one of them. He is, a lot of talk is, oh, this is overblown, his poor performance in the playoffs in bad weather. Well, I think people have short memories. A very fine Indianapolis Colt team got their ass kicked 20-3 by New England, and it was cold and the weather wasn't very good. And they also lost 24-14. So I remember some big failings. And let's face it, Peyton had a bad game in Indianapolis when they opened up the roof, and it was 52 degrees in Indianapolis this past year. So the man is much better in ideal conditions. So that's a big part of your handicap. I don't see how. I know like some handicappers have released already on the game. I know I gave out my first prop in my Super Bowl package, but I know some have played on the over. And my take is, I sure hope you don't get a nor'easter blowing up the seaboard, because I think it's crazy to go ahead and release an over already. Obviously, you're going to want good weather. I think that the current total of 48, if the weather holds and it's decent or good, you're going to see that 48 stay. It's going to drop if we get bad weather. And that's mostly my own handicap, that Seattle has the best defense in the NFL, and they've really been rock solid. They give up, I think, something like 7.8 points in the first half and even less in the second half. You're asking, I know Denver has lit up the scoreboard, but one thing to keep in mind as you're betting your props, look at Denver's schedule. They have played, according to my calculations, 0 great defenses all year long, and they played against 0 very good defenses. Now, you might say they played Kansas City twice, but they got the Chiefs in the second half of the season when they had all the defensive injuries, and because of that, they were not the same team. Obviously, they played the Chargers 3 times. They're much more of an over team, better on offense than on defense, although their defense improved. Oakland, yes, questionable on offense, but bad on defense. Played the NFC East, it was Eagles, Dallas, Washington. So a whole bunch of over teams throughout the year, Indianapolis. And because of that, you're going to see, I think, that the astronomical numbers that Manning put up aren't going to be there in this game. However, the odds makers know this, and they'll likely adjust for. But I think that you can focus on the player props and how they're going to do, and who is Richard Sherman going to be covering, because whoever covers, they're going to be mediocre. And they're going to be very mediocre at the end of this game. He will be yelling at them. By the way, I love Richard Sherman. He's my favorite player now in the NFL. But I like the WWF as well, and the Macho Man Randy Savage, rest his soul. And no, there won't be any props with WWF, but I do think there are some WWF-like props. See, there is a segue here. How long is the national anthem going to be? I joke about this. It's all scripted. The person who's singing it knows exactly how long it's going to be, and word gets out on it. And so if you see in faraway places you can bet on this, and the money is coming on the over or on the under, just bet that direction, because likely somebody knows already what the answer is. They have been given the answer key, and so if it opens minus 110 in each direction and the under becomes minus 130, I would lay the 130, confident that that's sharp money that's moving that, and they know something. You don't need to handicap something like that, because it is what it is. People know how long that national anthem will be. As for me, the time to bet, I like to bet early when the props first come out. In certain places, every book always makes certain mistakes that they get wrong. There's one book that always takes the spread on the game, and they just divide by 4, and they make that the spread on each one of the quarters, which is completely wrong. There's another book that takes the total and tends to divide by 4 with just minor adjustments. And obviously, the second quarter is forecast to be much higher scoring than the first quarter, etc., because they only put up lines once a year. It's no big deal, but they have low limits, but you do go ahead and see that. And then I like to bet late in the game. I like to bet all the time when people say, well, what Super Bowl party are you going to? And I'm like, Super Bowl party. Are you kidding me? I mean, I'm driving around like a madman. I'm trying to cut in line. There are 18 people in front of me, and I'm betting no overtime minus 600 right before it tips off because everyone in front of me is betting yes. And all the pros, they're lazy. They got their bets in, and they're at their parties. They're drinking their beers. And the bottom line is that last hour right before kickoff, you get some god-awful great bets. It's just you get numbers you couldn't even believe that you could get. But it's really a hassle because you got to fight your way through the crowds. It's not easy. And then you know what? The game kicks off, and they are stuck at, I don't know, the Rio. You're stuck at, some poker palace somewhere in North Las Vegas. And yes, so you're not going to have a very enjoyable first quarter Super Bowl experience. But usually what I do is I meet back at my house with a couple friends, and we watch it, and everyone shows up at the end of the first quarter typically because we're so busy ramming and jamming all the bets. So that's my first take on Super Bowl prop betting, what I do, and I think I hear all the time. I want to say a lot of people say this is just one game. You shouldn't bet more on this game than you would bet on any other game in the NFL, and that's the most ridiculous advice I've ever heard. Any other NFL game doesn't have 350 props I can bet on. Basically, you have 350 different games within the game. I would say if you can't find 5 to 7 good bets on the Super Bowl, you're just not even trying. So good luck to everyone. Good luck with your props. I will caution everyone, if you're not used to betting props, however, you probably want to talk to some people, get some expertise from some folks. Go over to pregame, the forums, talk to some people, and I think you'll find some very advantageous bets that you can be making. Good luck to everyone with your Super Bowl bets, and it's been fun here the entire year.